Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where faith and sports collide. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the show. This is episode number 104 of the Sports Spectrum Podcast, and it is presented to you in its entirety by Compassion International. For just $38 a month, you can sponsor a child and provide access to school, medical care, food, vocational training, and a relationship, the opportunity to know Jesus Christ as your Savior. Compassion.com. That's the website. Go there. It's just $38. And listen, Compassion is awesome. I mean, we have sponsored a child with Compassion for the last few years now, my wife, myself, and my daughter, and we have no regrets on where our money is going. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And your $38 goes to help these kids and give them a hope. This is what's happening. 1.8 million children around the world are being impacted in 25 different countries by your work, by your donation, and by your sponsorship with Compassion. So go to compassion.com and sponsor a child today. 150,000 children chose to follow Jesus Christ in the last year alone because of Compassion. And that's what's happening with your $38. It's giving children not just training that they need, but hope. 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 That's it. Hope in Jesus Christ. $38 a month. Go to compassion.com and sponsor a child today. Today's guest on the podcast, he is Matt Atkins, PGA Tour pro. And Matt was a two-time Division II All-American at the University of South Caroilna-Aiken. He was the Peach Belt Conference Player of the Year in 2013 before turning pro. And he played on his professional golf journey on the eGolf Tour, the Swing Thought Tour, and eventually he gets to the Web.com Tour, where last year he finished number 19 on the regular season money list, and that earned him his first PGA Tour card for the 2017-2018 season. And he's in his first season right now. So we talked to Matt about what it's like, what that adjustment is like playing on the highest level of professional golf. We also talked to him about the grind that is being a professional golfer. It is not an easy job. You're traveling every week. There's really not a chance to build community, to even be in your own home for many, many, many months in a row. So we talked to Matt about that. He also got married recently to his wife, Jill, and it's an amazing story that he shares about being introduced to his wife by an 11-year-old. An 11-year-old introduced Matt to his wife. So that story is really a great one. And also, Matt shares with us his encounter playing with Tiger Woods, or not actually playing with him, but watching Tiger Woods up close and personal. And it's a fun story to hear. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Here he is, PGA Tour Pro. This is Matt Atkins here on the Sports Spectrum Podcast. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey, it's great to talk to you, Matt. I'm excited. This is your first season on the PGA Tour, so let's start there for a minute. And tell us about the adjustment. You were on the Web.com Tour last season. How has this year been going thus far? What's that adjustment been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I spent 3 years on the Web.com Tour and was fortunate enough to play well enough to get my PGA Tour card for this season. And it's been a little bit of an adjustment. The Web.com Tour really prepares you for, playing competitive golf in this type of atmosphere. The PGA Tour is on a slightly bigger scale.
Yeah.
But, just playing different golf courses and playing for me in parts, we started out the 2018 on the West Coast, and that was all brand new to me. I hadn't really played a whole lot out there. And so just little adjustments like that, playing new golf courses, seeing these places for the first time, it can be difficult if you're not on top of your game. Just makes it difficult to go out there and play well if you aren't as knowledgeable with the golf courses. But to me, that's been the only really big adjustment. Haven't played as well as I would have liked to start the year, but I'm excited for the rest of the season. And what it holds for me, and just excited to get out there and play with some of the guys that I have been watching, throughout my college career, playing on TV in the last couple of years, and, being a fan of the game. It's just going to be great to be teeing it up with these guys.
Tell us about just the rigors of being on a golf tour, much less the PGA Tour, the traveling, living at a hotel, staying, all of that. Kind of what is that like? And then we'll get into your faith as well in a little bit. But what is that like, just traveling? I don't think the normal, fan or even like the casual golfer who's golfing down the road here at their local course can understand. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting career, to be honest. And I don't want it to sound like it's something that I don't appreciate, because I certainly do. I get to play the game that I love for a living, and playing any sport at a professional level, being an entertainment industry, it's just great to have fans that support what we do and love what we do, and make this possible to where we can play this game for a living. But on the outside world looking in at playing professional golf on any tour, it can seem a lot more glamorous than it is, mainly because maybe you're seeing the top players in the world who kind of have the ability to do things a little bit differently as travel, as far as travel goes, and where they're staying and things like that. But for the average person playing professional golf, it's just an absolute grind, and it's very, very tough. And I think with any career, there's just, there's sacrifices that you have to make, and there's things that we as professional golfers don't get to enjoy, that the average person gets to enjoy, that seem really simple, really basic, and almost boring to them after a little while, just being in the same place, week in and week out, being in the same community, and just getting to do normal life. A lot of people love the idea of traveling, and they really, that's the thing that I get the most. It's like, man, you get to travel and play golf, and it is great. I get to see a lot of places, and there's places that I've been that I would have never gone to if I didn't play golf for a living. But it's also the most difficult part of the job, when you are spending a lot of time in airports and in cars and doing whatever you have to do to get to the next place. And it really is not as high quality of a life to me as I would like it to be. I would love to just be here at home and spend every week here. If there was a golf tournament here, every week, I would certainly think that this is the absolute greatest thing in the entire world. At the Masters is, about 10 minutes from my house. So if we could just play that every week, it would be perfect. But
right.
I mean, we certainly have to give up some things, in turn for the things that we do get to enjoy. And it is very difficult being in hotels, and it just makes it hard, but it also makes you appreciate the finer things and the simple things. Like I said, just being with family, and just being in the same city every week, and seeing the same people, and just being in that community, and building relationships, and just having roots in a place. I mean, those are the things that I think I really appreciate after playing professional golf for about 40 years now, and going all over the place. It's everybody thinks the grass is always green on the other side, that cliche statement, but it's professional golf has taught me a lot about myself and about life, and what's really important.
I talked to a lot of baseball players, especially minor leaguers, on this podcast. And I remember talking to a few who made the jump to the majors. And we talked about their time in the minors, and that's a grind as well. They say, oh, people come out and watch us play baseball, and then they don't understand what type of grind they're going through, not just to play, but to travel, and, to really, you're not making a ton of money and all that. So I wonder, and then once they get to the majors, there's a difference, but when you're still younger and you're a rookie and you're just trying to figure things out, it's still such an adjustment. What was that like for you, or what has that been like for you? Take us to like the minor leagues, if you will. I don't want to call PGA not PGA, I'm sorry, the Web.com Tour minor league tour, but just going from that to then adjustment to the PGA Tour and what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those baseball players can probably relate, and golfers can relate to what they're having to do. And golf is certainly unique in the sense that it truly is a performance-based career. If you go out and you play and you don't make the cut, you don't make any money. I understand. If you play, I have a couple people that I went to, played high school baseball against and with and stuff that, have pursued professional baseball careers, and I certainly understand it's a very difficult thing, when you're just not making a whole lot of money and you're traveling and it's just the grind to get to that next level. And once you get there, your job's still not secure. You're still fighting for your job, and it's the same way with golf, and there's to even get to the Web.com Tour is such a grind. There's so many great players, and it's hard to even get onto that tour. And so that's even a completely different level of, playing for your life and really trying to, just keep everything afloat. And then getting to the Web.com Tour was a success for me. It was, kind of a goal that I had reached, but it was still, now that I got there, I didn't want to, I certainly wanted to move up to the PGA Tour, but I wanted to play well and to at least, keep my status on that tour and keep my job out there. And, week in and week out, you're just playing, for your life. And there's certainly, even on the Web.com Tour, opportunities to make a good living if you play extremely well. But like I said, it's all performance based. So it's, every week you're out there grinding and it's all hard earned. Everything, that guys have done, all the success that people have, it's just great to see people have that success, because I know how hard everybody has worked and what it takes and how difficult it is. Just the mental struggle that you have to go through as well. And now that I've gotten to the PGA Tour, it's another, goal that I've reached. And this is kind of different for me, because there's no next tour to get to. Like, this is it for me. This is the top. This is the greatest players in the world. And so the goals are all different. It's more about like winning on the PGA Tour and doing things on the PGA Tour that, personal goals, whatever it is you want to play in the Masters, you want to, win the Players, get in the FedEx Cup, like playoffs, those little goals. And it's like everything is different now, because this is now the final tour, on my checklist for me. This is the top of golf. And so it is a grind, and it's, even when you're on the PGA Tour, this is where I think, fans, maybe the average golf fan doesn't get it, is you're still playing for your job. And I know people that have won on the PGA Tour, and that gets you a 2-year exemption. But in that second year of that 2-year exemption, you're now playing for your job. I mean, you now have to finish high enough on the FedEx Cup list to keep your status for the next year. And as a PGA Tour winner, you will always have some sort of status, past champion status or whatever. You'll always be a conditional member of the PGA Tour. But, guys, jobs are on the line all the time, and it really is amazing, how tough that is. And, you've reached the height of the game, and it's still a grind. And, some of those guys make it look really easy, and they win a lot, and they keep their card out there every year. Seems like no problem. And but for the average player on the PGA Tour, it's a grind and it's hard, and you're always working to get better and to stay out there, basically.
We're talking to Matt Atkins here, PGA Tour Pro, on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Matt, let's go to the faith side of your life, maybe the more important side of your life, if you will. And let's start when you were younger. Let's go to the dinner table at the Atkins household when you were growing up, and what role faith and church and anything like that played in your life as a kid. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I was really little, my parents took my sister and I to church. But for me, sports, were my life. I played every sport growing up, and baseball was huge for me. Basketball, I played on all the travel teams, and a lot of hours were spent, traveling and playing sports. And when I got old enough, maybe 9, 10, 11-ish, to where you can start to play in more travel things and different leagues and whatnot, church was not really important. Sports were important, and that's what my life consisted of. I was a very competitive person, and that's pretty much where all the decisions, of my life were made, or revolved around sports. And, we talked about sports, everything was sports. And I grew up in Pennsylvania. When I was 12, we moved to Kentucky. My dad had gotten a new job, and it took us there. And, we picked a house in a certain side of town that would get me to play for this little league, because they had the best little league, from what we've heard, to, all-star team to get us to, hopefully the Little League World Series. All that is still, everything was revolving around sports. And I would say being in Kentucky, it was slightly more maybe like in the Bible Belt, as you would call it, and church was something that pretty much everybody attended church. And it was not weird to, be a Christian or anything like that. Obviously, it was weird if you were not, almost. And so, I didn't even know what that really meant. I would go to church, and it was a social thing for me. I would see friends there, and I get all the way to college, and even the first, 2 years of college, I would have told you I was a believer. I believed in God and things like that, but I didn't. What's still crazy to me is my whole entire life I never heard the gospel until a great friend of mine, who actually led our college ministry at my school, took me out to lunch and shared the gospel with me. That was the first time I had heard it, and it still blows me away how powerful Satan can be, that I could go to church a lot. From middle school all the way up until then, and not hear the gospel, because it was certainly presented. I am sure. It's amazing how he kept my ears from hearing that. Because I believe obviously that, Satan is real, and spiritual warfare is real. And, he was powerful enough for me to, for whatever reason, not to hear it. Obviously God had prevailed, and he was pursuing me that entire time. And, I finally heard the gospel, and believed, that Jesus lived a perfect life, died for my sins, and was raised again, and intercedes for me, that I can have a relationship with God, being a completely sinful person. And so, obviously I play professional golf, and sports, is still a huge part of my life, but it's not everything. It's not what I make all my decisions based upon. A lot of decisions are still based upon my career, just like anybody else's career. People live in certain cities because that's where they, their jobs led them and things like that. You do what you have to do, and
Sure.
and whatnot. But it's certainly, my relationship with the Lord is certainly going to be far more important than anything else in this world, because at the end of the day, if I don't have golf, if I don't have anything else, I still have that. And it's my eternity. It's impossible for me to wrap my head around eternity and forever, and there not being any time. It's just keep going on. And golf's not going to be there forever. So I know that there's definitely something way more important than anything that I'm doing right now.
Matt, when you were sitting down at lunch with your friend and he was sharing the gospel and you heard it for the first time, really heard it for the first time. The Bible talks about having ears to listen and ears to hear. How long did it take for you to get it? Because for me, I got saved when I was 27, and it took about a year for me to really grasp and understand what salvation was, who Christ was, what that meant. How long did that take for you to kind of grasp it and get it? Was it an immediate thing, or was it sort of gradual?
I would say that, it was kind of an immediate understanding of who I was, that I was a sinner, and that there was absolutely nothing that I could do to make the relationship right with God, and that I didn't have to do anything, that Christ had done everything for me. And in the eyes of the Lord, he looks at me, now as a perfect, blameless person, because he sees Christ when he looks at me. And I feel like it was kind of an immediate understanding of that. But, obviously, like everyone who is a believer, just from then, maybe it was the first year or two where I think I just learned a lot more. The gospel is just, there's so many facets to it, and it's so complex when you really dive into it. I think there were so many things that I began to learn and understand in the first year or two, just the complexities of it, that being sanctified and all of that. But I think it was an immediate understanding of who I was, and that I needed a Savior, and that he did do all this for me, and I have a Savior, believing these things, and that he is the only way. So it was remarkable to me still that, I go from not even knowing anything about it to, this, it was just so clear when it was presented to me, and that this is basically, what I was searching for and didn't even realize it.
Matt Atkins is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast, PGA Tour Pro. Sports Spectrum, of course, brought to you by Compassion International. Go to compassion.com and sponsor a child for just $38 a month. Every child being discipled in the Word of God. Over 150,000 children choosing to follow Christ through Compassion. They're bringing hope to children who need it. Go to compassion.com and sponsor a child today. You talked too about the grind of the golf world and being a professional golfer, and just what that looks like from the travels and the rigors and just fighting for your spot. And even you mentioned about how it's so performance based and how it's so, it's such a thing where you are earning, your keep, you're earning your card, all of that stuff. And yet Christianity says completely the opposite thing, that you don't have to do anything to earn salvation, that you don't have to perform for the Lord, if you will, to have him love you any more or any less. So tell me about that sort of dynamic, and then tell me about staying connected with the Lord on the road, what that's like, because you mentioned you miss the community, you miss the sort of normalcy of being able to get up in your own house and go to a church on a Sunday morning. That's obviously not the season of life that you're in. So how do you stay grounded in the Lord? How do you stay connected with God in the sort of rigors of the job that you have right now?
Yeah, with playing professional golf, it's certainly an interesting dynamic with it being performance based, and with what I believe, and that my performance doesn't matter. And I think as I've only played for 4 years, and certainly a lot of guys have played a lot more years than I have, and have been able to experience a lot more and learn a lot more. But it's from everything that I've been through, it's the performance still doesn't matter. It determines whether I have a job or not. But at the end of the day, I'm not really in control. I'm just going out there and I'm working hard every day, and the results are going to be what they're going to be, and the Lord's going to put me where he wants me to be, and he's going to take care of me and kind of take care of the results, and he's going to place me where he wants me. And so, at the end of the day, my performance really doesn't matter if I play good or I play bad. I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be, and I'm just going to go do my part and go put the work in and work hard for the Lord. And he's going to take care of me. So that's pretty much kind of sums up what I've learned in these 4 years. But it is difficult, and it's not like I've been perfect in these 4 years of that thought process or that approach, because the more, the harder I've tried to make it work on my own, it just seems like the less success I have. It just adds pressure to what you're doing, and you feel like you're in control, but you're not. I feel like I can control my own destiny if I go out there and I do this and I do that and I play well, and but at the end of the day, I'm going to be where God wants me to be. And so it is a very difficult thing. And I think all the believers out there on tour, we struggle with some of the same things. And it's great to have other believers out there. We have a tour fellowship that meets every week on Tuesday nights. And we have a couple guys that are on staff with an organization called College Golf Fellowship that come out there and lead us through the Word and do life with us. They're really great about talking with us about, it's not, we don't just meet on Tuesdays and meet for an hour and then leave. They're really good about just connecting with us and building relationships with us and investing in us. And what's great about the fellowship is there's guys, of all ages in there, and that's what's great about playing on the PGA Tour. So I'm able to learn from guys that are, 10, 15, 20 years older than me that have gone through some of the same things that I've gone through on and off the golf course. And so that's kind of our community out there. It looks a little different, like we said, versus going to, your church on Sunday. For us, our church body, we meet on, Tuesdays but it's certainly great having that community out there and having other believers that you can go talk to and you can go have accountability partners, and that you can go, tell your problems to, and they'll listen, and they'll, give you sound spiritual advice, and vice versa. I can listen to what they're going through and kind of share what, the Lord has done in me or what he's teaching me at the time. And so it is a great community, and it does look different. And that's, if I'm fortunate enough to keep playing this game for a living, that's how it's going to look until I stop playing, for the most part. And I do have a church here at home, but it's a little bit harder to get connected. I would love to, volunteer here and do more here, but I just can't commit to stuff like that when I'm only here, maybe 1 week out of 4 weeks or something. So it is a different dynamic, but it's still great. God works, wherever you're at, and he has that amazing power, and there's, a significant number of believers out there that make this career a lot more manageable from the faith side.
Well, we are called to bloom where we're planted, my friend, and you are doing just that. Matt Atkins from the PGA Tour joins us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Couple more questions for you, Matt. Was there someone that you've met as you've gotten older and you pursued this professional golf career, and have you met like a Tiger Woods or somebody like that and you were just awestruck? Have you had that moment where you've met somebody or played with somebody or found yourself in the room talking to somebody and you're just like, is this really happening right now?
What is interesting is, on the PGA Tour every week you see guys, that the average fan would, if they were this close to them, they, wouldn't know what to do with themselves. And I've never really been kind of starstruck for whatever reason. And maybe it's just my journey and getting out here, they're essentially, my competition. And even though I am a fan of the game, it's amazing because being kind of on the inside of the PGA Tour, you realize that everybody is just a human being just like everybody else, and everybody has different personalities and things like that. Tiger would probably be, like, if I got to play with Tiger, that would probably be the only time that I would feel different playing around the golf. I played at Torrey Pines, the Farmers Insurance Open, and he was out there, and he teed off 10 minutes in front of, they played 2 golf courses, and he teed off 10 minutes in front of me on the opposite golf course the first 2 rounds, and the tee boxes, the 10th tee box on one of the courses, it was really close to the first tee box on the other course, and I got to go watch him hit his first shot. But I didn't feel any different watching him hit that shot or anything, being kind of close. I think if I were to play with him, that would be the only time that I would feel kind of, in awe of playing with him for whatever reason, just because for whatever reason, he just seemed different to me. Just seems like,
oh, I get it.
there is that aura, like this.
Sure.
It is odd. But there hasn't been anybody, and I've gotten to meet, some guys, some great guys, and play with some guys that, you'd be like, man, like that was cool,
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I think my journey and just being out here and just realizing that everybody's a normal person for the most part, I haven't really been shocked or anything to be around somebody. But if I got the opportunity to play with Tiger, I would have to certainly focus really hard just on doing my thing and not being distracted. I could see that happening.
All right, so Matt, in talking to some people at the PGA Tour and doing some research on you, I heard about the story a little bit about how you met your wife. You're married to Jill now, and I've heard that the way you guys were introduced was fairly unique. So could you share that story with us and how you met Jill?
Yeah, it's a fun story. I always, this is one of the few times that I have to tell this story because when people ask, she's always around and I make her tell it because that's just kind of her thing.
Yeah.
So Jill and I, we are both from the same town in Kentucky, and there was Jill taught 6th grade. She was also the coach of the middle school dance team, and there was a little girl that we were really good family friends with, and she was pursuing golf. She was 11. She was probably maybe she was 9 when I first met her. And I would go out there and I would help her with golf and try to teach her some things, when I was home. And so we just became our families just became close, and we would hang out a lot and over the course of the next couple of years. And so for whatever reason, 11-year-old girls, you don't really know what goes through their heads all the time, but for whatever reason, she had mentioned, hey, you need to date my dance coach. And I was just thinking, whatever, you're 11, you're just like, that sounds like it would be cool to you or whatever. And I was just not interested in being set up or anything. I always felt like that would be awkward. And so her name was Macy, and she was kind of playing both sides. She would tell me, oh, you need to date my dance coach. And she would tell Jill, kind of the same thing. Hey, you need to meet my friend Matt. Like, he plays golf, and it's really funny to hear Jill's side because she knew nothing about golf. She just knew who Tiger was. And she was like, why would a professional golfer want to meet me, kind of thing? I'm a teacher, yada, yada. And so, Macy's dad, she was the assistant principal at the high school that I went to. And every year they have a New Year's party at the school, and they play games and just do some fun stuff. And it's mostly kids. There was a few adults, and they invited they invited me, and that was not weird. We were close family friends, but they also invited Jill. They wanted that to kind of be the blind date setup kind of thing. That was their dream goal for that. And so Jill ended up coming. She had brought a friend of hers with her, and all the kids were so excited. I mean, like, they could have cared less that it was New Year's party or anything. They were just so involved in, wanting Jill and I to basically start dating or whatever. And so it was an interesting atmosphere, a lot of 11, 12-year-old girls and stuff there. And so we got to talk a little bit at the party, but there was a lot of activities going on. And she actually left her phone number on a paper plate because Macy's grandma made her leave it. She was like, no, leave it. Like, leave your number, da da da. And so she ended up leaving, and her Macy's grandma gave me this paper plate with her phone number on it. And I just had messaged her, saying it was nice to meet her, Happy New Year kind of thing. And the next day, Jill invited, and we were talking, and she invited me to come hang out with friends, and just kind of took off from there. And here we are, I guess a couple, 2.5 years later or something like that, married, and probably a dream come true scenario for Macy and all of her friends. But it's a fun story to tell in a fun way, and it's just a different way to meet. And for me, I never knew how I was going to meet somebody because I was playing golf, I was traveling all the time, and I was, there's a small, you're already shrinking the number of eligible wives when you're searching for a solid believer. And so, it was definitely a God thing. Meeting her the way I did, I would have never even thought in my wildest dreams it would be like that.
I hope Macy was at the wedding. Macy was at the wedding, right?
Yeah, she ended up being a junior bridesmaid in the wedding, so she was really excited.
Excellent.
She actually had told Jill leading up to it, she's like, oh, I'm so excited. She's like, I'm probably more excited than you. And Jill laughs about that because she's like, I'm pretty sure nobody's more excited than me to get married. But that's just kind of into Macy's mind. That's how excited she was. And it was kind of from day one of her trying to set this whole thing up. And now here we were, there we were getting married, and she was just beyond excited to be a part of it.
Such a great story. We're talking to Matt Atkins here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Last question, Matt. We ask this to all of our guests on the podcast, and it's an easy question. Sometimes it's not an easy answer, but, still so many more years of golf and life to live, God willing, and all that you're doing right now with Jill. I just wonder for you right now in this season of life, what are you learning from the Lord? What is Christ teaching you in this season of life for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly can be a tough thing. I feel like the biggest thing that Jill and I are learning, and maybe me especially, is just patience, and I think the true definition of what it means to have faith. And I think my career is just the way it looks and kind of how it functions and operates and all that. I think God really uses that to teach me, what it really means to have faith. I mean, a lot of people say, I have faith, this and that, but to really be in a position where you feel like you have zero control, and that everything can be stripped from you, so quickly. I think that's the thing that the Lord is teaching me the most, that, there's material things don't matter. That my relationship with Him is the most important, will always be the most important thing. And that no matter what I have or what I don't have, nothing's going to affect that relationship, and nothing should affect that relationship. And just being just being patient and understanding that, he promises to take care of myself, to take care of Jill, and that there is, absolutely nothing to be gained from worrying, and, that he's gonna clothe us and feed us, and everything, I think just that his timing is a lot better than my timing, and for me, just it's an everyday reminder, just with Jill, I would have never drawn up my life on a timeline to look how it did and to meet Jill, and, I would have had it happen years before that, and, he knows absolutely everything, and his timing is perfect, and I think it's very easy for everyone in life to be like, I want this, and this, and I want it to happen in this time frame, because we have these desires, and none of those desires are bad. But to trust him fully and his timing, and what it really means to have faith, and just live every day knowing that he is in total control, and there's absolutely nothing to fear or to worry about, and what it means to truly have peace in your life and in his plan. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning in this season of life. Just another reminder, one, I'm not in control, and two, I have a perfect Father who loves me beyond what I can imagine, and that he's gonna take care of me and then some. He's gonna take care of me even better than I could have imagined.
Absolutely. This has been wonderful to learn the journey, to follow along with Matt Atkins, PGA Tour Pro, here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Matt, thanks so much for sharing your insight, your heart, and we appreciate you and wish you best wishes, and hope we can connect again sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.
And we do thank Matt Atkins, PGA Tour Pro, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Matt just getting started in his golf career, and it's been fun to hear his journey thus far and see where the Lord takes him on his quest to be successful and achieve as much as he can on the PGA Tour Pro, knowing that Christ is at the center of his life. So we wish Matt nothing but the best. Of course, Sports Spectrum brought to you by Compassion International. Go to compassion.com and sponsor a child. I mean, we've been doing this now for 7-8 years, sponsoring children with compassion, and I just love what they stand for. They're the most trusted child development ministry in the world, and you will never, I promise you will never regret sponsoring a child and putting $38 a month toward providing hope for this child that you would sponsor. I mean, you get to go directly to them and talk to them and send them letters and communicate with them, hear about the things that they're learning and doing, and in turn, they get to learn about you and your family. It's really been a neat thing for my daughter, who's 13, to be a part of and be able to communicate directly with this child that we sponsor all the way from Haiti. One child at a time. Caring Christian adults in the local church know every child by name, whether they are sick or well, struggling or excelling, and walk each child into discovering their God-given talents and calling. This is what Compassion does. Compassion sponsors like you and me are helping over 1.8 million children in 25 countries, and yet it's never larger than just one child at a time, one day at a time, and one sponsor at a time. And you can make that difference. You can be that sponsor by going to compassion.com and sponsoring a child today. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Reach us on Twitter at sports_spectrum, on Instagram and Facebook as well. You can also follow our YouTube channel, where we have a ton of content on there, videos, all sorts of great stuff. And you can also email me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com, and let us know what you think of the podcast. Let us know any guest ideas you might have, any ideas on stories that you want us to cover, any people you think we should be interviewing. Email me, jason@sportsspectrum.com. Thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum.